Well, we just finished talking about the importance of the climate and the environment and why Black folks should care. Florie Liser is going to come and tell us why we should care about Africa and the role that the Corporate Council on Africa is. Oh, you got that? You got it set up really well. Fantastic. But talk about why we should even care about Africa and doing business in Africa and having this summit right here in Dallas, Texas. Florie, welcome to Let's Talk, and tell us why should we be interested in opportunities in Africa?
So first of all, thank you to the Washington Informer. Denise, thank you for having me as a part of this show today. As people of color, the diaspora, we absolutely should care about Africa. And there is a perception of Africa which is unfortunately not accurate. Too many times on the news, with the exception of media folks like yourself, what we see about Africa is negative. People starving, conflicts and wars, etc. And yes, Africa does have some challenges, but there are lots and lots of successes in terms of the continent. We have the youth who are, the growing demographic of Africa. They are tech savvy. They are the young entrepreneurs of Africa who are driving those economies and also connecting with US companies, buying our products and our services. And so CCA, as a 30-year-old business association with both US and African members, companies, who are both multinationals as well as SMEs. We are sending out the word. We have been focused on what the opportunities are in Africa to grow your business and to grow the economies, to create jobs both there and in the US. And so our members are excited about the opportunity to come together with business leaders from across Africa, as well as with heads of state, ministers, and other decision makers. We're coming to Dallas, Texas, May 6th to 9th for our US Africa Business Summit, and very excited to be bringing not only the Africans who are leading on their side, the public and the private sectors, but also from the US side, we have top companies from around the US, as well as a stellar delegation coming from the United States government. So why Africa? I'll just end by saying that there is no major issue that the world faces today, including climate, as Reverend Yearwood was just talking about, to addressing poverty, to education, to food security. There are no issues in the world that are critical that you can solve without partnering with Africa, without a focus on Africa. And so this is why we tell people that what we're doing is really critical. And we're inviting everyone to come to our US Africa Business Summit in the next, 10 days or so,
Yes.
and join there to have a conversation about all the sectors that are vibrant and are driving economic growth all across Africa, as well as in the United States.
One of the things that I think is such an injustice when it comes to telling Africa's story is that we don't really know how progressive the continent is. And, I think back, and this is a really minor thing, but for me, it was a real aha moment when cell phones first came out. Right. And, here in the United States, you didn't give your cell phone number out to anybody because, if they called you, it was going to cost. And, you called them, but they couldn't call you. When I went to South Africa, it was so different. Everybody, that was their main means of communication. So everybody shared that information. And look at where we are today. Right.
Absolutely.
We don't even have landline phones anymore. They didn't have them, but now they have a source of communications. And so I'm thinking, as I read things about, different countries in Africa, from banking to agriculture to, like I said, finance, they're so progressive. And so with this summit, I think, what you're doing now is showing what those opportunities are to really engage and connect. So tell us what is the main objective of the summit, and also why Dallas?
Well, let's start with why Dallas. So Dallas is, the center of the country. You have Fortune 500, Global 100 companies there. One of the ones I want to talk about is the fact that our chairman of the board of Corporate Council on Africa is a diaspora African. He's a Nigerian American. He runs a company called Access, which is a health tech company, doing incredibly well, and not just in the US, but globally. And so we're in Texas for that reason, but also people don't know that Texas has the largest of all the states in the US. Texas has the largest diaspora population, and the city of Dallas, the Dallas-Fort Worth area, is the third largest diaspora community in the United States after New York and Washington, D.C. So,
Define diaspora for us, Florie. Define that.
well, it's people of color, diaspora Africans, but I think in the sense that people who are born in Africa, so the newer generation born in Africa and coming here now. And
Okay.
so not necessarily African Americans like myself, but more the diaspora African community. And so, there are so many people of the diaspora community of Africa that are in the Dallas region and in Texas more broadly. And so, one of the things that we want to do is to talk about how diaspora Africans, as well as African American SMEs, women-owned SMEs, youth-owned SMEs, can connect to each other and do business. And we tell folks that, lots of US companies, large and small, are in Africa doing good. But the bottom line is that they're also there because they want to do well. And some of the fastest growing economies in the world are in Africa. And, everyone in the world who's trying to grow their business, they're in Africa for a good reason. But you were just talking about the perceptions before and what's happened with cell phones. And, you have a whole tech revolution that's happening on the continent. A lot of the, latest apps and latest tech applications are being developed on the continent, and they're sharing it with us.
Yes.
That's one more reason why we want to shine the light on Africa. And then I'll say this, Denise, sometimes people will say, oh, doing business in Africa, oh my goodness, and I'll say to them, well, wait a minute, Africa, which part of Africa are you talking about? Which of the 54 countries are you talking about? Africa is not a country, it is a continent.
Yeah.
And, if you're concerned about one particular country or one segment of a country, maybe that's rational. But to be concerned about, Africa and doing business there, that risk perception is actually not one that aligns with reality. And for those of us who go to the continent all the time, I show people pictures and they think that they are seeing, San Francisco or, New York City or whatever. And I'm like, no, that's this is Accra, or this is, Joburg. Or so again, the perceptions of Africa and of doing business in Africa is something that we are definitely working on, so that we can make sure that our stakeholders, both U.S. and African businesses and government leaders, know just what the potential is for our partnership.
I want to ask you who some of the key speakers that you are going to have at the event, and maybe some of the topics. And I'm just going to say, we just had the NFL draft yesterday, right? And where is the NFL going? To Africa. So I mean, and I think you have a panel that talks about that as well. So tell us what folks can expect and if they can still register for the conference.
Oh, absolutely. We still have room, not lots because it's been filling up every day, but please do go online and register. We're at www.usafricabizsummit.com. And you can go in the chat. We'll put it up in the chat so people can go there, but it's usafricabizsummit.com. And you are still able to register for the conference. So in terms of who's going to be there, and then we'll talk about some of the topics we're going to cover, including the financing and investment opportunities in sports and the creative arts, right? Lots of shows, you see now, Netflix and Amazon Prime and other US platforms, streaming platforms that are using African content. And we love it over here, right?
Yes.
So that's an area where the opportunity to invest and to expand African content into what's streamed in the United States and worldwide is there. But we'll also be talking about energy and energy transition. Your former guest was, focused on that, the climate issues. But for Africa, their natural resources of oil and gas in particular are, tremendous. And they still have to develop that so that the people of Africa will have access to electricity. That's an issue which in this transition, people need to think about. But also, they have solar, they have hydro. There are many, many things that are on the continent where they're able to do that. Agribusiness is another area and sector we'll be focused on. Africa has something like 60% of the arable land in the world that is not yet cultivated.
Wow.
So when we're thinking about, what Africa can offer the world, Africa can offer the world food security, right? So investing in developing the agricultural sector there, and then value added agriculture, not just the raw products, but the value added products that are needed in the global food supply. Africa can play, a huge role in that. Health is another area. We have at least 4 or 5 sessions on different aspects of health. Manufacturing in Africa, during the COVID period, the Africans not being able to produce it meant that they often were the last in line to have access to those medicines. And so now we're looking at that and what the African can do in the health supply chains, not only for pharmaceutical products, but also for medical equipment. So, there are just lots of areas that we're going to be focused on and talking about during the summit. We have a session on SMEs. We have a session on, aviation.
Yeah, Florie, you keep mentioning SMEs, and I didn't stop before to ask you to share with the audience what that means.
Small and medium-sized enterprises.
Okay, all right.
And sometimes people put an M in front of the SME, MSME, for micro, small, and medium-sized enterprises. And those are the company in the U.S. those are companies that grow our economy with 50 or fewer employees.
Yeah.
In Africa, you have a lot of SMEs and MSMEs that may have 10 people, but they're still driving the economic growth there. But I wanted to share, Denise, some of the folks that are coming. We have African heads of state, like a president, right? And prime ministers coming from, I won't mention their names, but the countries. So right. Angola, the president of Angola, Botswana, Cabo Verde, or Cape Verde, as some people would call it, Lesotho, Liberia, Malawi, Mozambique, Nigeria, Sierra Leone. We've got either heads of state or vice presidents or prime ministers coming from all those countries I mentioned. And then we have ministers of trade and health and ICT and digital. I didn't mention that. That's another topic we're focused on, is the whole digital economy that's so important for development in Africa and everywhere else in the world, including the US. And so we have ministers coming from probably more than 20 or 25 countries from across Africa. And then on the US side, we're really excited. Yesterday, the White House announced that the head of the US government delegation to our US Africa Business Summit will be Ambassador Linda Thomas Greenfield.
Yes. Okay.
Our ambassador to the
Yeah.
United Nations, and a longtime Africanist. She's been ambassador in different places, Liberia, etc., but who now is playing a global role. And that shows you how important Africa is for the US, that they will have Linda Thomas Greenfield coming. But we also have the head of the Millennium Challenge Corporation coming, the head of the US Trade and Development Agency coming. I think we have the Deputy Secretary of Commerce coming. Key people. Oh, and the chairperson of the U.S. Export-Import Bank is going to be there. And so, and the number two person, the Deputy CEO of the U.S. Development Finance Corporation, DFC, they're going to be there. I'm sure I have missed someone.
Yeah,
but we have many top people coming from the U.S. government who will be meeting with these African heads of state and leaders. And last but not least, we have to talk about the private sector. We have CEOs and senior executives coming from U.S. and African companies. So we're very excited about that. We expect somewhere around 1,200 to 1,500 people for the summit. So we're really excited about that.
But to save you, I'll say it like my dad used to say it. Y'all, you have Lottie Dottie and everybody who is somebody is coming to the summit, no matter how big or small. And I like the fact that you're focused on the SMEs, since we talked about that, because you don't have to be a big corporation to come and find opportunities there at the summit in Africa. And it's great that it's being hosted now this year in the United States, because I know the last summit was in Botswana. How can people learn more about the Corporate Council in Africa? I know we're going to put your website up so that people can go to the website. But can anybody be a member? What does it take to be a member of the?
So we have different levels of membership in recognition of the fact that everyone that has an interest in Africa is not a multinational corporation. Right. So we have 3 levels of membership. And so for, smaller companies, it's 5,000 a year. We have mid caps, 10,000 a year. And then the big guys are 25,000 a year. But I would say that probably 40% of our members are small and mid-sized companies. Wonderful. Which I think also tells the story about who is driving the US economy, frankly, as well as our engagement with our economic engagement with Africa. Wow. So we welcome companies of all sizes, and we also welcome individuals to come and be a part of the summit. We don't have individual membership in CCA, but we find that, we open our events to, like the summit, to lots of people, whether they are part of a corporation or not. Sometimes they just have a strong interest in the continent, want to learn more, want to meet people. And, our current motto is that we provide the access, connections, and insight for anyone who is interested in doing business on the continent. And this summit, we're telling people that we are bringing the best of Africa to meet with the best of America.
Wonderful. Well, I want to thank you so very much for taking time out. I know that you all are busy trying to tie up loose ends and have get this conference on the road or get it going. I'm hoping, Florie, that at some point, I know we'll be there covering, but I would love to have maybe a U.S. company representative who actually did a partnership, is engaged with doing business on the continent or vice versa, to show that it's not just one of those networking events, but it's a real business growth event. So we will talk about that, and once we get past.
And we have exhibitors there. I didn't mention that we have an exhibition area, and we're going to have at least 20 or 30 different companies from U.S. and Africa who will be showcasing what they do, the products and the services. So that's another opportunity, Denise, for you and your team to come and to talk to people who are, who are there. They'll be open to having you come to their booths and meet with them and find out what they're doing. But let me just thank the Washington Informer for connecting us to your community of media partners from all across the country. This is very important to us, and we're delighted that you are a media partner for CCA for our U.S. Africa Business Summit, and look forward to connecting more as we go forward.
Well, it's important for us, and you all are a conduit for that we create these bridges and that we, connect more, because I think our future depends on it. So thank you for all the great work you're doing, and looking forward to seeing you in a couple of weeks.
See you soon in Dallas.
All righty.
Okay.
Thanks much.
Where do you come to